So, Stuart Scott is another man that's also part of the foundation board, together with Greta Thunberg. And with us, luckily, we have Stuart Scott. So the panelists will stay with us on air, and then I'll have the interviews with you later on. But with us now, Stuart Scott. Give him a word hand.
Thank you.
So, Stuart, you have retired from what I would say a conventional career.
Yeah.
And he's focused on a very different career. And from 2008, it's an unpaid career, service for the planet, protection of life on Earth. Yeah, Pretty good career, huh?
I decided to divide my CV up into two aspects. One conventional before 2008, and one service to the planet since 2008. And I was told that's the wrong way to do a CV by someone who reads them and processes them for a living. And I said, well, I'm not looking for a job.
Mm-hmm. Well, excellent. What's your main focus been since then?
My main focus is trying to save some semblance of a future for my kids and the kids who are represented by the people sitting here in this audience and people out there watching us.
Wonderful. Well, you have a presentation for us, so
yes.
The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you. I always start my presentation here. This is where it starts and ends, our only home. This photograph, the last taken from Apollo 17 mission, is said to be the most published photograph in the history of humanity. If you had the globe the size of a basketball in your hand, the atmosphere would be a coat of paint, hardly visible. Now, I've used that symbol at the center of the logo under which I do all of my work online, and you'll see several websites with that logo. They all have my thumbprint somewhere on them. Currently, I'm working with the World Scientists' Warning to Humanity. I'll explain to you more what that's about, but I've formed a website and an organization, scientistswarning.org. I encourage you to go. I'm the executive director, and there's an email address to get in touch with me. I like to give that at the beginning and end of my talks. So the Scientists' Warning to Humanity started in 1992, the same year as the Rio Summit. And there it is. It was published by the Union of Concerned Scientists, an advocacy group out of Washington, D.C., very well-respected scientific advocacy group. The first sentence says it all. Human beings and the natural world are on a collision course. Human activities inflict harsh and often irreversible damage on the environment. Extremely clear statement of our problem. And the warning, we, the undersigned, senior members of the world's scientific community, hereby warn all humanity of what lies ahead. A great change in our stewardship of the earth and the life on it is required if vast human misery is to be avoided and our global home on this planet is not to be irretrievably mutilated. I don't know how more visceral you can get. Well, my question is, did we change? What happened? Unfortunately, not much. As human beings, we are constructed to attenuate, to dampen signals, and as strong as a signal may be, we forget about it very quickly. Our political system is defective in the speed with which it forgets about what we should be doing. So fast forward to 2017, 25 years later, when a scientist at Oregon State University, Bill Ripple, an ecologist, realized that when you remove the wolves from an ecosystem, the trees start to die. And he realized that we are doing that kind of thing in ecosystems all over the planet. And he got together with several of his peers, and they wrote the World Scientists' Warning to Humanity Second Notice. I think it should be called Final Notice. I'm not sure we'll get another chance to warn humanity. It was signed by over 15,000 scientists when it was released. Another 8,000 have signed since, approximately. It holds a record. It has a very high index for how often it's been cited and published about. It made a big splash. It also makes note of the first warning. Clearly, it springs out of that first warning in which 1,700 scientists signed, including half of the then living Nobel Prize laureates. By the way, I have to take a dig at the so-called, as Anders said, Nobel Economics Prize, which is a phony prize, endowed by the Swedish Central Bank for the promotion of the current neoclassical growth economic meme. So the second World Scientists' warning to humanity deals with ecological stressors, and I want to make a note of several of them to you. When I have a longer period of time, I go into each of them in detail. Biodiversity loss. Our food systems, the refrigeration, production, the chemical use, the transportation, the waste, put it all together, and it represents, I'm told, about 1/3 of our greenhouse gas emissions. Freshwater scarcity is gripping in many cities. Marine life is being depleted at an alarming rate. The related ocean pollution, they're not identical, but they're obviously interacting, and many of these stressors interact, and they multiply one another. We are destroying our forests at an alarming rate. We are toxifying the air, and I don't call it air pollution because we are immune to that. We've become anesthetized. Air pollution, we've lived with air pollution for years in many cities. Air pollution produces low birth weight babies, has been linked to dementia and Alzheimer's, and we are toxifying the air. And governments, the EU in particular, is still trying to weaken air pollution laws. We are degrading our soils around the world, continuing to lose topsoil, as Anders mentioned, at an alarming rate. Population is the elephant in the room. Non-starter. Politicians don't want to talk about population. If you want to get reelected, and climate change. By the way, mentioning reelection, I learned a new acronym recently. Perhaps you've heard of the old acronym NIMBY, N-I-M-B-Y, not in my backyard. It came up when windmills, when wind electrical generation started to be pushed for in many areas. And people said, well, I think it should happen, but just not in my view plane. NIMBY. A new one that I was made aware of a couple of weeks ago, NIMTO, or NIM2, not in my term of office. Climate change. Now, first let's go into biodiversity loss. I'm repeating something that Anders said. This is a plot of the decline of species, and take a look at the black line, which represents all vertebrate species. This graph was extended to 2012, and it was a 58% loss of the biomass of vertebrate species. This is not specifically extinctions per se, it's the biomass loss, the numbers of these species. Extended further to 2018, it became a 60% loss recently. I have to update this graph. Unfortunately, this is the attitude of many people from my country. As long as I've got my McBurgers and McNuggets, how many more species do I need? We have to fight the attitudes that are rampant and entrenched in society. Population, I'll present one graph here. I want all of us to take a look at the Earth's population as estimated and then calculated over the past 10,000 years. With that dramatic exposition of our growth rate, the growth of human numbers, I say, is it even possible to talk about sustainability? Does it make any sense unless we talk about population? And let's go finally to climate change. I want to show you 4 maps. This is a flat projection of the world. The scale is relative drought. So for instance, this area of the Sahara was not damp or moist or did not have appreciable precipitation in this period, the first decade of the century. It was normally dry. So this is relative precipitation. The red areas are drought stressed. The blue areas and dark blue areas have unusually large amounts of rainfall in that first decade. And I'm going to show you the 1/3, 2/3, and final decades of the century. 2030 through 39, 2060 through 69, and 2090 through 99. We will be challenged to grow food for even the existing population, no less for 10 or 11 billion people. And the areas that will still have adequate precipitation for the growing of food have thin soils because they are currently boreal forests. What this will lead to will be war over dwindling resources, competition and warfare. This is not my prediction. This is the prediction of very credible scientists who study this. When farms get dry, they wilt. The Netherlands in 2018, I used to have to go out and search the past few years to find all the slides I'd need for a presentation. I can now go all within 2018 and find what I need. Germany this year, Denmark. That photo came from this article online indicating that Denmark experienced a 40% drop in its grain yield. $billion loss, many bankruptcies from just 1 year of extreme drought. And our future holds that in store for us increasingly. Sweden in 2018 came from this article online where the government was having to bail out farmers. 1 year of drought. This is the heat wave that was experienced through the EU this year. You can all remember that. We forget so quickly. It's cold out now. It just snowed today for the first time. Past memory. This will become more and more common. When forests get dry, they burn. California earlier this year. Greece. Japan, not known for its wildfires. Siberia, also not known for wildfires. Canada, and this is a different kind of hothouse effect. The United Kingdom experiencing forest fires, wildfires on their moors. Again in California, still burning. Extreme loss of life and property. The heck with property. Oh, property will just increase the GDP when you go and rebuild those houses. That's how perverse our economic system is. A tanker that arrives at its destination contributes less to the GDP than a tanker that sinks. Denmark, and yes, Sweden. Now, to comprehend climate change clearly, I want you to watch the current heat effect of our past CO2 emissions. It's the heat you're looking at now. That much heat 400,000 times a day, 365 days a year. That data is from James Hansen, who was director of NASA's Goddard Institute for 32 years until he resigned famously in 2013, saying the time had come to sue the American government, and he could not both work for and sue the government at the same time. This article, Hothouse Earth, Climate Change, Hothouse Earth Risks Even if CO2 emissions are slashed. And that came from this article where Johan Rockström and Carl Folke were two of the principal authors, both Swedes, perhaps well known to this audience. The article appeared in the American National Academy of Sciences publication. This is under the watchful eyes of Donald Trump. As did this report released just within the last couple of days. This is the fourth National Climate Assessment. Again, despite Donald Trump's denialism, an insanely greedy and stupid person, I don't know if I'll get back into the US so easily this time. Seriously, my global entry card expires while I'm here. It places direct responsibility on human activities. And this is the URL if you'd like to go and get the report. There we go. That's what it looks like online. It's very, very well hyperlinked. You can hone in on specific parts. I was playing around with it today. Very well constructed site. In Washington, D.C., you have to keep your head down. If you are actively talking about climate, you stand to lose your job. And all of this urgency has led to headlines now that look something like this. New climate debate, how to adapt to the end of the world. From the Bloomberg Business Week online. Researchers are thinking about social collapse and how to prepare for it. We've reached a whole different watershed of how we are understanding what we face. An article that appeared in The Guardian in the UK recently, Mayer Hillman, who is a well-known, well-respected social scientist who predicted phenomena 40 years before they occurred in the UK. The 86-year-old scientist says, accepting the impending end of most life on Earth might be the very thing needed to help us prolong it. This one raises the hair on the back of my neck. The beginning of the article, we're doomed, says Mayer Hillman, with such a beaming smile that it takes a moment for the words to sink in. The outcome is death, and it's the end of most life on the planet because we are so dependent on the burning of fossil fuels. There are no means of reversing the process, which is melting the polar ice caps, and very few appear to be prepared to say so. Now, I like to buffer this kind of information. This is one man's mental model, albeit credible. We each have our own mental models. We advise our mental models of the world by the mental models of those we come across and what we feel their credibility is. And I say that especially because the next one goes a bit further. Earlier this year, Professor Jem Bendell self-published this report because the journal that he attempted to publish it in wanted to censor it. They wanted him to either cite previous works that come to the same conclusion, which there are none, or to tone it down, when in the article itself, he says that those in the field of sustainability will be disinclined to talk about this. And the first sentence says it all. I'm sorry I went past it. Let me back up. The purpose of this conceptual paper is to provide readers with an opportunity to reassess their work and life in the face of an inevitable near-term social collapse due to climate change. Deep adaptation, it's being called, if you want to Google it. Now, I'll go to interventions, what we must be doing. I believe we should be suing governments and corporations. Recently, Urgenda successfully sued the government of Netherlands. This march helped. We should be getting out there for demonstrations like this. These young people, and James Hansen in the back row, are suing the US government. Obama could have settled it before Trump took office, but decided not to. What was he thinking? These kids are suing the government of Washington State. We need to vote. We need to vote every election.
Dear young people,
Don't vote.
don't vote.
Everything's fine the way it is.
Trump. That was us.
He's our guy.
Tax cuts for the rich? Hell yeah. I'm rich as fuck.
Climate change? That's a you problem. I'll be dead soon.
Sure, school shootings are sad.
But I haven't been in a school for 50 years.
I can't keep track of which lives matter.
Sure you don't like it.
So, you'll like some meme on Instagram.
if the weather is nice, maybe you could go to one of those little marches.
You might even share this video on Facebook.
But you won't vote.
You young people never do.
But I do. I do.
I do.
Midterms, primaries.
Every single election.
We'll be there, but you won't.
Because we're a generation of doers.
Not whiners.
And we're doing great.
That did go viral. It got several million young people out, changed some elections. I say get angry, get very angry, but not just getting angry, do something about it. Take action, all of us. I'm going to speed along. I believe I'm over my time. Civil disobedience. The time has come for civil disobedience. Sabotage, peaceful sabotage of the current system. This young lady, I think you all know her, Greta Thunberg, one-woman strike outside the Swedish parliament. She's inspired that all over the world. I call her Joan of Arc of our times. 21 cities, school districts in 21 cities in Australia have followed suit. This is called the Extinction Rebellion, going on in the UK this year. They took over 5 bridges across the Thames on November 17th. Many were arrested. This was the Thames Bridge by Parliament. I like to slightly change their framing to unite for life. There's their address if you want to join, and next year they're going to take it international. Refuse to fly, it's been said by guests here earlier this evening. That's just a short period of our flights. We should be doing this instead for meetings. We should be doing this for transportation. The bottom line is we must all become active immediately to avert a catastrophe for us, for our children, and for all life on Earth. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Stuart Scott. You paint a very bleak future, but it needs to be painted. We need to feel it in our bones. And thank you for sharing all this knowledge with us. Thank you for coming.